Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Lifehouse. My name is Ryan. It's so good to see you guys here in the room. I know we get a lot of people online as well. Welcome. Glad you guys are joining us. Hey, if you've been around Lifehouse a little while, today is going to look a little different, but we hope, we think a good kind of different. And if you're brand new here, if this is your first time, then you don't know any different anyways. And so we're just glad you're here. We hope you enjoy today. This is Allison and this is Dave, and we're all excited to be with you guys today. We're going to start with a song that hopefully kind of hits all of us, because here's what I know: we're all human beings, and so all of us in some way or another are coming into today. We're coming into the building or tuning in online, and we're carrying a little bit of baggage, carrying some maybe some guilt, maybe some shame. Maybe we're going through a really, really hard thing right now, but we all have burdens. And this song is an invitation for all of us, for me, for us, for you guys, to lay your burdens down, lay them at the door, in the proverbial door online. But we want to invite you to do that because we believe there's a God who cares, and there's a God who's big enough to handle all of our burdens. So we hope that you guys can lean into this as we sing this song kind of for you and also over you as well. Sometimes on this journey, I get lost in my mistakes. What looks to me like weakness is a canvas for your strength. And my story isn't over, my story's just begun. And failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does. Your failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does. Ooh. Lay your burdens down, ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house, yeah. Arrival's not the end game, the journey's where you are. You never wanted perfect, you just wanted my heart. And the story isn't over if the story isn't good. And failure's never final when the Father's in the room. I said, the failure's never final when the Father's in the room. Whoa. Down, oh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Oh, you're in the Father's house. You're in the Father's house, yeah. Prodigals come home, the helpless find hope. Love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Prison doors fling wide, the dead come to life. Love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Oh, miracles take place, the cynical find faith. Love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Jericho walls are quaking, strongholds now are shaking. Love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. I said, now love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Whoa, lay your burdens down. Whoa, ashamed at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore, yeah. Oh, you're in the Father's house. Thank you guys so much. Again, if you missed the beginning, my name is Ryan. I was so glad that you're here at Lifehouse today. First of all, I need to address, if you were wondering why there's a whole section of chairs missing, it's because we had a swimming pool there this morning when we came in, and we didn't think anybody wanted to get wet this morning. You know, you just wanted to come to church, didn't want to take a bath. Totally get it. So anyway, that's being addressed. That's why we've got that going on. But yeah, we're really glad that you guys are here today. I got to tell you this story. Last weekend, I actually raced a half marathon. And so that's for you guys, that's 13.1 miles, okay? You guys ever see the stickers on the back of cars that say 13.1, you know, for the half marathon? Some of them say 26.2 for a full marathon. I don't have any of those stickers, but I saw a sticker one time that said 0.0. I thought that dude is awesome. Like, I want to be his friend. So funny. Anyway, that's not the point of the story. So I was racing this half marathon, and I was feeling pretty good. I was like mid-race, you know, miles 6, 7, 8 or so, feeling good. I was ahead of my pace, and the course that we were on was an out and a back. And so we turned halfway, and we started to go back toward the finish. And we were passing people who were behind us in the race, right? Because it was an out and back. And so for like, you know, miles 6, 7, 8, 9, we're passing all these people. And I used to be a cross-country coach, and so I kind of went into coach mode, which is kind of fun. It motivates me. I was like, hey, you know, as we were passing people, I'd like, hey, good job, you know, keep it up, you know, you're doing great. I'm not kidding. Not a single person said anything back to me, okay? And here's why, is because I happened to be running next to a female who at the time was the first female in the race. She was the top female in the race. I just happened to be running next to her. So, and people knew that as they were coming back. And so as they come back, they were saying things, but they were saying things to her. And they were like, oh yeah, you know, like you're the first female, like you go girl, you know. And and these were mostly females that were saying things, I'm just saying. And this one was like, girl power. She actually did that. She's like, girl power, you get him, girl. It's like, this is bull crap. You know, I thought I was doing pretty good. I'm not getting any love here. And so I was like, I have to beat her. Like, I've been called out. I have to beat her. And so she kicked my butt. I didn't beat her. And so the moral of that story is, I guess, because we got a couple more songs here. So if you guys are sitting there and you're like, Allison, like, girl power, like you get, you know, Ryan stinks, like you're awesome. Like if you think that, it's totally true and fair. I get it. Let's just keep our comments to ourselves this morning, okay? I've had enough of it for my own, just for me. Let's be cool. Can we be cool this morning? All right, so Allison's good. But yeah, so I didn't feel real welcome in that race. If you're new here, we hope you do feel welcome. You know, we hope really, and we hope you felt welcome from the parking lot all the way into the lobby, checking your kids in this room. We want you to feel like this is a place that you can be, that you can belong. And I know we've got new people in the room today because my grandfather, who just turned 89 yesterday, so he lives in Northeast Ohio, and he watches our stream online every single week. Like, I don't even know how that works, but he does every week, and he's here today and in the room for the first time, so that's just a really special thing for me. So I know we have new people. I know there are other new people too, because we hear it all the time. One guy just this week said, hey, I've been watching online for a year, and I'm planning on coming in person today. So if that's you and you're in the room, welcome. If you're here for the first time, we just want you to know how glad we are that you are with us. So we have a good morning for you guys, whether you're new or whether you've been here for 15 years. We're glad you're here. This next song we want to sing with you guys is a song all about our identity. And I think if you guys can relate to this, we hear about our identity a lot, who we should be, what we should be doing with our lives. We hear it from the media, we hear it from other people, maybe expectations outside of ourselves, and that can be a really tough thing. But the identity that we want to lean into today is who God says that we are. And so as we sing this song, we hope you know that there is a God who loves you, who cares about you, who says that you are his child, and there's full love and acceptance there. So I want to invite you guys to stand, and let's sing about that God.
Who am I that the highest king would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child. Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place.
Not forsaken, I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am.
Come on, sing it out.
I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see you now. Oh, I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. Oh, I can see you now. Oh, I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life.
Thank you guys so much for singing with us. You can take your seats. And as you do, we love that song. It's called Broken Vessels. We love it because that's what we are. The three of us up here, we're broken vessels. All of us, in our own way, are broken vessels. But there's a God who created us and who loves us and chases us down and is bigger than we think he is. And he loves us. And he offers us hope and forgiveness and the ability to put us back together. And it's something that only God can do, that we can't do for ourselves, to put us back together, make us whole again. And that what we believe is truth, that truth, we talk about in here, we talk about it in our kids' environments. If you have kids, they're hearing that truth, that there's a God who made them and loves them and wants to restore them, make them whole again. And that is only made possible with students and kids and everything that goes on in our lobby and the parking lot. It's made possible by a bunch of you guys, people that are volunteers. They serve and they give of themselves week after week in order to see that become a reality, to let people know that how much God loves them. And we love these people so much. Many of you guys out there are volunteers. We call them our heroes. And we wanted to give you a taste. If you're a volunteer, we want you to see this video we're going to show. If you're not a volunteer, we want you to see this, to see how much our volunteers mean, not just to us. I'm on staff, not just to us as a staff, but to the people that they serve, the kids and the adults that our volunteers serve week in, week out. Have some really cool things to say about our volunteers. So check out this video.
Hey everybody, Zach here from the band, looking to give a shout out to who we think are the true heroes of a Sunday. We're not talking about the drummers. We're talking about the people that are running lights, people that are running sound, people that are on the cameras, people that are on the web spreading that love of Jesus Christ in ways that we just simply cannot by ourselves up on stage do. They make us look good, they make us sound good, and we love you guys for it.
My hero is Dale Schulte because every Sunday morning he welcomes our little Sawyer to his lap and just cuddles him like he's one of his own.
Guest services are my heroes because they start me off every Sunday with my coffee and they welcome me each Sunday.
The welcome team are our heroes. Whether it's the wagons picking up our kids out of the car or the smiling faces and the greetings at the door, we always feel welcome at Lifehouse, even if you're running a little late.
Thank you for what you do each Sunday.
My hero in Wombaland is Josie Coleman. When we first started attending this church, we dropped our daughter Willow off, and Josie just cuddled her up, got her to nap, and those were two things we could never do at home. So Josie, you are my hero.
My hero in Wombaland is Chris Ferris. Willow eventually grew up and she moved into the cheetah room. And Chris just loves on Willow when she's here. She now gets to participate in activities. It's great.
We are so thankful for our oldest son, Beckett's role model and group leader, Cooper. Cooper's involved in a lot of activities, but he still takes the time to come every Sunday and pour himself into our son and his buddies and teach them the importance of a relationship with God. And it's not only in church. We've ran into Cooper outside of church on several occasions, and he always makes sure to come up to Beckett and let him know that he's loved and cared about outside of church as well.
Paige is my hero because she takes time out of her day to spend with my child, helping her foster her relationship with Jesus.
Candy is my hero because of all the things that she does for my daughter Jalen and all the girls in her group. She's so involved, she keeps things fun, and she helps them all grow in their faith, and me and all parents are forever grateful for her.
Ian is my hero because he makes my son Ian happy every Sunday.
The parking team are our heroes. Jack loves getting wagon rides into church on Sundays. Thank you guys for all your hard work.
Mr. Bill's our hero because we come to first service and we come to second service, and we asked our sons what service they would rather come to, and they said Mr. Bill service.
The Lifehouse Kids check-in team are my hero because 4 years ago when we came for the first time to Lifehouse, we had a small child and I was nervous about putting him into Wombaland for the first time, but they made me feel completely safe, and now we're so thrilled to be here 4 years later.
Emma and Peyton are our heroes because they help us at camp.
Paula and Ava are my heroes because they have fun with us.
Jamie is my hero because she loves us so much.
Anthony is my hero because he helps us learn more about the Bible.
My hero is Travis Plumley as he sends daily devotionals to the men in our couples group.
My hero is David Bradford because when my husband and I joined the married couples group, he made him comfortable and enjoy the groups every week.
My hero is Jamie Bradford because I love that she has such a heart for service.
The Lighthouse Band and production team are my heroes because the band does such a great job of leading us in worship each week, and the production team makes it possible for me to watch services online when I can't be in the building.
And it's so cool. As I looked out, I mean, there's so many people in here that serve. There's guest services, lots of guest services shirts. There's Upstreet shirts, Life Kids check-in, and we got Wombaland, the band. So many of you guys give of yourselves unselfishly, and we are so grateful. You guys, our volunteers, help make Lifehouse what it is, a church that we love to be a part of, that we love to come to week in and week out. So thank you guys so much. And if you're here and maybe you've been thinking about hopping into serving, we want to give you an opportunity. Maybe it's time for you. You've been coming a while, and you're like, it's time. And if you want to just get some more information about serving, you don't have to commit to anything yet, but we want to give you a chance to join one of our Rockstar serving teams. Easiest way to do that is to text the word Lifehouse. Text Lifehouse to the number on your screen. And it's just your way of letting us know that you're interested. You want to start a conversation. We would love to have a conversation about what it might look like for you to serve. There's so many areas, so many opportunities for you to do that. We would love for you to be a part. We're going to keep rolling with the rest of our service right now. We have what I think is a real treat for all of us. From time to time, we use video teaching for our messages, and we have that today. And we have a gal that this is the first time that we're going to hear from her here at Lifehouse, and her name is April Farmer. And April is from Atlanta, Georgia, and she's part of of North Point Community Church, which is a partner church of ours. Andy Stanley is the lead pastor there, and we sometimes hear from him, but we get to hear from April today. April is a singer, and she just has a really unique story and a message that I think is going to be really impactful and really helpful for all of us. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to April.
Good morning, North Point Church. How are you doing? Oh, wait a minute. Y'all had breakfast. Come on. Yes. It's so good to see each and every one of you. I'm excited to be here. As Miss Sandra said, my name is April Farmer, and it is a pleasure to be able to be here with you. And I know some of you might be looking up here and be like, wait a minute, isn't that that girl who was singing a couple of weeks ago? That is me. I do that as well. It's funny how God shows us over time that we are gifted in more areas than we think. And things are not always what they seem on the outside. So I'm just privileged and honored to be able to share with you on today. I wanted to kind of give you a bit of my background and how I got introduced to North Point Ministries. Back in 1999, I moved here after college. And in 2000, I started working for Sprint Long Distance over by Cumberland Mall. And one day, one of my coworkers told me, he said, hey, they're giving away free lunch across the street. I was like, really? They said, yeah, all you got to do is sit there and listen to a message for about 30 minutes and they give you free lunch, mostly Chick-fil-A. And I was like, hey, that sounds wonderful. So I think it was a Tuesday, every Tuesday I started going over to this hotel across the street from my job. And I sat down and I saw this man come up on the screen and his name was Andy Stanley. And I promise you, if you go to my house, there's this flip book, because it was a long time ago, of all these CDs of Andy Stanley teaching these messages. And so that's how I got introduced to North Point Ministries. And about 8 years ago, I started singing at the North Point Ministry churches as a worship leader, and that's how I got introduced here. And so I'm really excited to be here and excited to share today. In addition to that, I am a master of social work, and so I worked as a community-based therapist for several years before I came on staff at Buckhead Church about a year and a half ago. And my favorite part about that job was not only that I just got to interact with a whole lot of people, kind of go to where they are and kind of serve them based on what their needs were. But one of my favorite parts about that job was that I got to go in and teach life skills and parenting classes at the Cherokee County Jail. And that was just such a wonderful experience for me, being able to go in there. And I know that's not everybody's scene, but when I grew up, my dad used to have us go sing, me and my brothers, we have to go sing at the youth detention centers just to kind of share Jesus with the kids who were in trouble. And so it wasn't foreign to me, but I got there and I loved being able to kind of equip people with things that they could do as they were processing getting out of jail and things that they could do when they got out. But probably the most important part about it was what I got from them. I got to hear so many stories from so many men and women who had been through various situations. And I heard stories of desperation. I heard stories of brokenness and stories of pain and people who were really in some extreme situations. And so that was really powerful to me. And you find that these people, a lot of them had come to their wits' end in life. They had gotten themselves into situations where they felt like they had run out of options. And we wanted to kind of introduce to them, or they felt like that they were at their last resort. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And when you think about that concept of the last resort, it's simply asking the question, where do you go when you run out of options? And today we're going to dive into a story of a person who had done just that. They had run out of options. We're going to hear a story of a person who experienced Jesus as their last resort. Now, there's a common phrase that I think many of us have probably used throughout our lives, or at least heard. And the phrase says, desperate times call for desperate measures. Have any of you all ever used that or heard that or found that to be true? And it's a very common phrase that's used, but I wonder, how do you know that a situation is really desperate? How do you know when you have actually truly run out of options? And typically, we start to kind of hear people use phrases that start with words like, I am going to lose it if I don't, or I've just got to XYZ, or if I could just do this, then my life would change and things would be better. But we also know that every desperate situation to one person could seem not desperate to another person. You could hear their story and be like, that's not a desperate situation. But to them, it's extremely desperate. I had a son who thought he was in a desperate situation once, and it had to do with a girl. Right, it always has to do with a girl, right? So my son got the privilege of being able to go to a boarding school for high school in Chattanooga, Tennessee, the Macaulay School. And it was just a situation that I did not see coming, but he got the opportunity. And so he was in the 9th grade, and he was away at school, and he was coming home one weekend. And I had to go sing out of town in California. And so I had my brother come stay at the house, and I talked to my son. I said, hey, I'm not going to be home, but you know what the rules are. I said, I know you met this girl this past summer. You cannot go see her. You just can't. One of my rules was, and I thought it was a really great rule, if you can't drive, you can't date. Those were the rules. If you can't pay and get yourself there, then you can't go yet. You just haven't reached the point where that's a privilege for you. And so he's like, come on, Mom, please, I gotta see her. I haven't seen her in a while. I was like, absolutely not, sir, you cannot. Oh, okay, all right. So he goes through the weekend, and I'm away doing my thing, and he's here. And so I'm on my way back, and I just landed, and I get in my car, and my son is already headed back to Chattanooga. And so I give him a call, and I say, hey, Chris, how was your weekend? He said, oh, man, it was great. I said, well, what'd you do? He said, I hung out with the fam, I met some friends or whatever, and I went to church this morning. Man, church was great. And I was like, okay, wonderful. I'm so glad that, you had a great time, and I'm sorry that I missed you, but I'll talk to you soon. So we get off the phone, and I call my brother to let him know I'm on my way home. And I talk to my brother, and I say, hey, how were the boys this weekend? He said, oh, they were good. They didn't give me any trouble. I dropped Christopher off at the movies to see his girlfriend. And I was like, whoa. Hold up. Wait. I'm sorry, say that again. And he was like, huh? And I was like, you did what? He said, well, he's 15. That's his girlfriend. I figured you wouldn't mind. I was like, boy, you knew I would mind. Why would you do something like that? And then, so now my son's desperate situation caused a desperate situation for me. So I told my brother, I said, well, look, you're going to have to hang out the house for a little while longer because I'm about to make a trip to Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I get in my car from the airport, and I go straight up 75 all the way up to the Macaulay School. And I told him, I said, and don't you call your nephew and tell him I'm coming. I need the element of surprise to be on me. And so I make the drive, and I pull up to the school, and I get there, and I call him again, and he picks up the phone. He's like, hey, Mom, hey, how you doing? I was like, I'm good. He's like, well, what's up? I said, well, I wanted to ask you a question. Is there anything about this weekend that you need to tell me about? He was like, no, I had a good weekend. I went to church this morning. I was like, okay. I said, well, I need you to come downstairs now. And he says, what? I said, I am here, come here now. I put my mommy voice on. And he comes downstairs, and he's shaking in his boots like, why are you here at my school at 8 o'clock at night? And I said, we need to talk about this weekend. And so he was now confronted with me. And the fact that I made the trip, he knew he was in trouble. And so finally he kind of broke down, and he told me, and he was like, Mom, he used that phrase. He was like, Mom, I just had to see her. I just had to do it. And what I realized is that he didn't care. It's like he was willing. He wanted to see her so badly. He had placed so much value on connecting with this girl that he was willing to do whatever it took. And no matter what it cost him, he was willing to do it. And what we find, or what I discovered in that, and when I thought about it, is this, is in times of desperation, your level of determination is based on the value placed on what you desire. And we all place a value on lots of different things. We place value on success. We place value on building wealth and building healthy relationships. We place value on having a healthy body and being physically fit. And then there's oftentimes where there's some people who place value on things that some of us may take for granted, things like food or shelter or opportunity or safety. And there's a story that is introduced to us in the book of Mark, chapter 5, that we're going to take a look at today. And if you look round about chapter 21, we're introduced to this man by the name of Jairus. And Mark introduces him by name and says that he's a synagogue leader. So this is a man of status and position in the city. And he has this situation that's going on. His daughter is sick, and he's so desperate to get his daughter well, and he places such a high value on that he leaves where he is and he goes to where this man named Jesus is, and he falls at Jesus's feet on his knees and he begs Jesus. The scripture tells us that he begs Jesus, would you please come with me to my home and heal my daughter? And Jesus, in all of his awesomeness, says, absolutely, you lead the way. And so they start this journey to Jairus' house. But along the way, they are intersected by another story. And that is the story that we're going to focus on today. They're intersected by this woman who also was in a very desperate situation, a woman who had placed a high value on what she needed as well. And what she needed more than anything was freedom. And so we're going to take a look at her story, and there are three key components, three key elements that brought her to this place of freedom that we're going to examine. And the first thing is desperation. She was a desperate woman. And in Mark chapter 5, verse 25, it says, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. So we're looking at her level of desperation. And I want to take a deeper dive into this and kind of examine her level of desperation. First of all, she's identified as a woman. Unlike Jairus, who is identified by name and by his position, he's identified as a synagogue leader. This is just simply a woman who has no name, and she's identified by her condition. So we look at that and we look at Jairus. We look at this man who is a synagogue leader. He's a person of status and position, and he was actually coming to Jesus on behalf of his daughter. His sick daughter didn't have to leave her house. She didn't have to go anywhere because her daddy, this man of status and position, left where he was to go to Jesus. But this woman was all alone, a woman identified by a condition with no name. And in addition to that, she was ceremonially unclean. What do you mean by that, April? Well, back in this day, in the Hebrew culture, there were a lot of rules. If you look back in Genesis, you'll see all these rules. But one of the things that made a person unclean was the very issue that she had. She had an issue of blood. She had this blood issue that was going on. And because of that, it made her unclean. Not only did it make her unclean, but it made everything she came in contact with unclean. If it was a person she came in contact with, that person was unclean. Their clothes were unclean, and everything had to be purified in order to become clean again. And so with that, that means if she's dealing with this unclean condition for 12 years, this woman is unable to worship at the temple. She's unable to go to the market and buy her own food. She is ostracized from the community. She essentially is a social outcast. And to make matters worse, she was enduring extreme suffering. It says she had suffered a great deal under many doctors, and she spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. So she was poor, she was destitute, she was broke, and she had nothing to show for it. She was no better. And so we see her level of desperation. And the next element that we see in her story is her faith. And so we're going to take a look at verse 27. In verse 27, it says this. It says, when she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Oh my gosh. Consider the faith of that statement. All I have to do is touch him. She didn't know very much about who he was, but she told herself, if I could just touch his clothes, I would be healed. And what I love about that is that what she heard about Jesus was so impactful that it sparked a hope into her desperate situation, which ignited faith. And when we look at Romans 10:17, it says faith comes from hearing the message, and the message is heard through the word about Christ. So I have a question I would like to ask you. When was the last time hearing about Jesus increased your faith? I'll take it a step further. When was the last time you shared about Jesus and increased someone else's faith? Think about it. It's like reviews. I don't know about you, but every time I go out of town, without fail, I am going to pull up Yelp because I want the good food. I want to know where the best catfish is. I want to know who serves the best collard greens and mac and cheese. I want to go where the barbecue is slamming. And so I look up Yelp because Yelp means these people have already tried it. They've tasted and seen that the food is good. And they have made these reviews, and so I can trust that. And I'm going to take my chances there more than I would take my chances anywhere else. Why? Because I'm not going to waste my time or my money or my energy on some place that's not good. Right? That's what we do. We look that up. And it's so funny because it reminds me of something that I experienced growing up in my church back home. We used to have this thing called testimony service. And in testimony service, this was a time of the service where there was a microphone just kind of sat out, and anybody could come up to this microphone and they could tell everybody what God had done for them that week. And I remember as a little girl just kind of sitting with such anticipation to hear what somebody was going to say, because you never knew what somebody was going to say. Everybody didn't know how to tell their testimony right. But they would get up there anyway. And they would grab that mic and they would just share their stories. And you would hear so many things about how we didn't have any more food in the house. And then all of a sudden, our neighbor just came to the house and dropped off all this food. Or how their son was sick and that the people came and they prayed for him and he was healed, and just all these different things. And it was so exciting, and it ignited faith in every person that heard. And it was these types of story that gave me faith when I needed it the most, when I became this woman. You see, I grew up in the faith. I grew up learning and knowing about Jesus and going to church and hearing all the Bible stories. And I believed at a very young age, and I knew that God was real, and I accepted Jesus into my life. But walking that thing out wasn't always easy. And so by the time I was 20 years old, I had become a mother of two. I had my oldest son when I was 17 years old, and then I had my youngest son when I was 19. And I was all by myself. Both dads just dipped immediately. I remember being in college, and I went up to my son's father and I told him that I was pregnant, and it was a hard thing to do. And he was like, yo, I'm sorry, but I don't want any kids. You're on your own. And he would literally walk past me on campus like he didn't even know me. Like he didn't even know me. And I felt so ashamed walking around with this big belly, and I'm the one who's exposed and he's just playing football. You know what I mean? Nobody ever knew. And so I carried around a lot of shame, but by God's grace, I went to college. I finished college. I was at Georgia Southern University, and I promise you, my kids were like the mascots because they went everywhere I went. And we finished college because we did. They were both at my graduation, and then we moved up here to Atlanta. And all I really knew to do, I was trying to make it. And I used every bit of public assistance that was available to me. Right now, I've got student loans still out the wazoo because I used all the money they would give me just to live, just to make sure I could feed my kids, just to make sure that I could provide a life for them. But I came up here to Atlanta and we started living, and all I knew to do was to keep trusting God. That's all I had. I couldn't trust dads. I couldn't trust these, other people. All I knew was to trust God. And my parents would always say, baby, just trust God. And I did, and I kept pressing my way, and I took them to church, and I taught them everything I knew. We watched all the VeggieTales in the world, and we did our thing, but it was hard. And down through the years, I piled on so much shame and so much guilt for what I had done, for decisions I had made. I felt guilty every time my son asked me, Mom, where's my dad? Mom, why is he not here? Mom, what did I do? Why doesn't he love me? Mom, how come we can't play this sport? Well, baby, I don't have the money. I can't afford it. And it broke my heart. And not even just in society and just regular parenting things, but even at church. I'd go to church and you see this picture perfect frame of the mom and the dad and the kids, and everything looked so wonderful, but that wasn't me. My story was different. And then they'd have call for singles. They'd have these huge singles events. Well, I'm single, I think, but I got some kids, and can they come? It wasn't for them either. And so I found myself in this place where I felt so guilty and so ashamed. And every time they had a parent night, it's just me. I remember even when my son was trying to get into school, they kept asking me for both parents' financials. And I was like, all you're gonna get is mine. And I literally had to write a letter and say, look, you're not gonna get any information from that dad because he doesn't even pay child support. So I'm sorry. But God carried me through that, but I carried so much shame and so much guilt. But just like this woman, I was in a desperate situation. Just like this woman, though, I had this faith that I had heard down through the years, and this encouragement that I had heard in this scripture that I read my whole life that said, if you keep trying Jesus, he's gonna work out for you. He will make a way for you. But I was in this desperate situation. And just like this woman, I was reaching out to God. With every time I went to church was me reaching out to God. And we see in this story that this woman is reaching out to God. We see that she presses her way through the crowd. She makes her way. She didn't get the luxury of staying at home and somebody going on her behalf. She had to go out with her unclean self and just press her way to Jesus. And she finally got to him and she touched him. And then in verse 29, it says this: immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. What an amazing thing. Like, yes, she got it. She was there. Story over. But no, just when we think that's the end of the story, Mark blesses us with this final scene that I absolutely love. Now, we've seen her desperation. We've seen the depths of her desperation, and we've seen her faith on display and demonstrated. And then there's one final component that we see in her story, and that is truth. In verse 30, it says, at once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my clothes? Really? And the disciples said, you see the people crowding against you, his disciples answered, and yet you can ask who touched me? But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. And then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. And you look at that, and I'm thinking, I'm like, that's a great story, but I have a question about one of the lines in here. It says, trembling with fear. Why is she trembling with fear? But then I thought about it. Think about the implications of what she had just done. She is ceremonially unclean, and she just touched a rabbi. This means that his clothing, according to the law, is unclean now. What would he do to her? He could expose her. He could do anything he wanted to her. He was a rabbi. And not just that, what if she tells this truth? What are the people going to say? What if somebody realizes, wait a minute, I felt her pressing past me to get to him. And they're going, I'm unclean now. What could happen? The implications were huge. And then I said, well, if that's the case, why would Jesus even ask the question? Why would he even go that far if he knew what those implications were? But what I realized is that there was something different, obviously, about this touch. When you look at that text, it says that, the disciples asked him, what do you mean? There's people pressing all around you. So obviously he was getting a lot of touches. But there was something special about this touch. So special that it invoked power from him, so strong that he said, no. I have to expose this. Everybody needs to know about what happened. Everybody needs to know about this experience. And Jesus knew that. And so I believe he set her up to tell her story. He set her up to tell her testimony, to tell the entire truth. And why would he do that? He wanted to do that for the crowd. I think the crowd needed to know, and Jesus knows they need to know what just happened. And not only them, she needed to have this opportunity to step outside of her shame and take this leap of courage to go and tell the world, everyone around, the fullness, it says the whole truth of what had happened. And to think about it, how else would anybody know what happened if she didn't talk about it, if she didn't tell the whole story? And I love how Jesus responds to her. In verse 34, it says, he said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. How beautiful is that? After she poured all of her junk out, she exposed herself. She told all her dirty laundry to this man. It says she told the whole truth, nothing but the truth, like all of it. And his response to her was daughter, not unclean woman, not woman with no name, but daughter. Your faith has healed you. And he did just that. Not only did he heal her body, but he freed her mind, body, and soul. And when I saw that story, I connected so immediately. Because just as I told you, I spent years just piling on shame. But I kept going to church and I kept doing the things that I knew to do. I was serving and I was in my small groups and I did all the things. And there was this one season of my life where I was the worship director at a church. And so back in 2010, I took this team to a worship conference in Texas. And it was being hosted by Israel Houghton. I don't know if y'all know who Israel Houghton is, but he's one of my favorites. And I like upbeat songs, like stuff that makes you move. Lord, you are good. And that's what I like. And so we're in this conference, and the lights were up and the sound was blasting and everybody was just jumping, and it was the best thing ever. And we were all enjoying this conference and this music and this worship. And then at the end of the night, he quieted everybody and had everybody take a seat, just like you're sitting now. And the room got real still and the lights went down and it was real calm. And it was just Israel Houghton with a guitar and maybe a cajon. It was very calming. And he started to sing this song that hadn't come out yet. It was a brand new song. And he said, from first to last, you knew my days, future and past. You saw everything. When I would fail, when I would win, when I would need grace to start again. Nothing surprises you. Nothing surprises you about me, Jesus. Nothing that I could do. Nothing could separate you from me, Lord. You see me, you know me, you love me madly. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, whoa. And all of a sudden, I feel this knot just start stirring in my gut. And it moves up my chest into my throat. And then these tears start to well up behind my eyes. And something was happening to me. And I'm trying to hold it together. And in the midst of that silence, he goes to the bridge and he says, you're not mad at me. You're not mad at me. You're more than enough. And you're madly in love with me. And as he said said those words, this girl, I wailed. Oh my gosh, I lost it. And in that moment, people started turning and looking at me like, what is wrong with this girl? But I had experienced a touch from Jesus in that moment. In that moment, I didn't care about anything else. Nobody knew what I had gone through. Nobody knew the shame that I had experienced year after year after year. The burden that I carried as a single mom, being looked at as a person that did it all wrong. They didn't know. But in that moment, just like this woman, I had reached the hem of his garment. And in that moment, I felt that power, that same power based on my faith. I felt that power hit me in that moment with those words. For the first time, I heard Jesus say to me, daughter, not single teenage mom, daughter, your faith has healed you. You're persistently going to church. You're persistently reading that word. You're persistently leading worship and singing, Lord, you are good and your mercy endures forever. You're consistently leading other people to a place that you kind of dove into at home all by yourself with your tears and your crying. You're consistently being a part of your small group, taking your kids to children's church. Your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. And I thought about that, be freed from your, what do you mean, be free? Be free, live in your freedom. So he didn't just heal her body, but healed everything, and he did the same thing for me. At that moment forward, my life changed. Did I get married the next year? No. None of that happened, but that's the thing. Marriage wasn't the ultimate goal. The goal was my freedom. Freedom from my shame and my guilt, and that is what he did. I stayed a single mom for 23 years before I ever got married. And that was okay. I knew I had God and I had purpose and I had a call on my life, and I will do this. I will keep going. And I will tell anybody you give me opportunity to about what God has done for me. And it's just the beginning. But just like he did it for her and he's done it for me, if I took the mic out in the audience and I passed it around, we'd hear story after story after story about people reaching the hem of his garment and feeling the transformative power of Jesus to free them from a past and free them from sin and shame. And so my prayer for you today is that this daughter of Jesus' story illuminates this hope in you, that as you face the challenges of life, that you would remember these words, that desperation, faith, and truth poured out to Jesus brings healing and freedom. And even though Jesus was her last resort, and my last resort even, he also instantly became her launching pad into the rest of her life, a life of freedom. And God wants nothing more than the same for you. God wants nothing more than for us to be free. He wants us to be free from our suffering, free from our pain, free from shame and fear and sin. That's what he desires for us. And being free is simply living free. It's like walking in the freedom. It's like all of a sudden my head is held up high. Now I don't walk around with my head held down. When I have my kids, we're all walking around. It's just the three of us, but our heads are held high. And I'm no longer ashamed of the story that God has written on my life, because there's nothing to be ashamed about. Because God took what was crazy and jacked up to somebody else, and he's created this beautiful tapestry for his glory, for his honor, just like he did for this woman. And so if you're here today and you're a Jesus follower, I want to encourage you to do just that. Be free. Walk in the freedom and the liberty that God has given you as a follower of Jesus Christ. The Bible tells us that he whom the Son has set free is free indeed. It's like, you're free. Yeah, be free. There's so much liberty in it. And there's so many things that you can discover about yourself when you really just start to step into and walk in the freedom that God has given you. And if you're here and you're exploring faith and you've heard all these stories about Jesus, and I know it's stirring in you and you've got questions, we want to help you answer those questions. But I want to invite you today to consider Jesus as your last resort. And also consider him as your launching pad into the rest of your life of freedom. And I want to challenge each and every one of you. You all have a story. I dare you, even this week, go tell somebody a piece of your story. Watch God ignite faith in somebody else as you share what God has done for you. Big or small, it's all him. He does it all. He causes all things to work together for good to those who love him and are called according to his purpose. So would you let God be your last resort and your launching pad into a life of freedom? Would you pray with me? Father, we thank you so much for who you are. You are such an amazing God. You are the master crafter. And what you build is solid as a rock. And God, you are building in us a faith and a trust in you like we have never known. So for God, for those of us who are struggling and walking in the freedom that you've given us, God, help us to be free in you. Help us to acknowledge and walk out to who you've created us to be. And Lord, not to hold on to any shame, to not go back to what was, but to boldly go where no man has gone before. And that is the journey that you've set out for us, to bring glory and honor to your name. And God, for those who have questions, God, I pray that you answer those questions. I pray that you would meet each and every person right where they are and draw us closer to you and help us, God, to walk out this freedom. Give us faith, give us strength and courage, oh God, to be the men and women that you have created us to be. And help us to share with others the story that you're writing in our lives. And so that faith can be multiplied in every area of our lives with every person that we come in contact with. And God, we'll make sure that we give you all praise and all glory and all honor for it. Why? Because you deserve it all. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
So good. Anything I say now is just going to take away from the good stuff that we heard from April. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you guys for being here so much. We love you. God loves you. And we'll see you next week.